Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simone Simmons. I'm an upcoming junior at Walnut Hills High School, and I would like to welcome you to our fifth CPS Speak Up and Speak Out session. In our past sessions, we have had our superintendent, Mrs. Laura Mitchell, tuned in twice. In our last live stream session last month, we were able to ask her questions about things like education reform and classes not being offered at school to teach us life skills. We have had Police Chief Isaac online as well, along with our Deputy Superintendent and our CPD Sergeant Officer Mitchell. I am a part of the Executive Planning Board, where we have been having weekly meetings since our last monthly broadcast session. I am very pleased to announce that we have now completed our list of demands and we have sent them out to our superintendent, and which she has responded to scheduling a meeting with us at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Some of the points that we have on our list include police training with our officers to properly learn how to de-escalate situations and how to properly communicate with our community, and promoting more civic engagement from our fellow students, and creating peer groups in each high school to discuss some of the issues us Black students face at school, and to help our history to be taught more than just the 28 days in the month of February. Our goal as a group is to start a movement and to be the change we want to see happen in this world, not only for our district, but also for our city. Now I would like to invite Mrs. Nia to unmute her mic.
Thank you, Simone. Hello, everyone. My name is Nia Bauke. I am with Cohere Community Engagement Company, and I am, as always, extremely excited to facilitate today's conversation. We have some amazing guests, students in particular, and teachers that we'll be talking to. And thank you to Simone for a great recap of what we have accomplished and talked about thus far. So I will ask the students to go ahead and unmute themselves and show their wonderful faces. Hello, hello. Is this everyone? Are we waiting on anyone? Okay, great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. As usual, I will have you all just introduce yourselves, what grade you're headed into this upcoming fall, which is right around the corner. School year is about to start. And let's see, what should be our fun question? What's the most fun thing that you have watched or read this summer? And Rachel, why don't we start with you?
Hi, my name is Rachel Scales. I attend Review East Academy. I am a senior this upcoming fall. And the funniest thing I watched this summer has probably just been like on TikTok all day.
TikTok, does TikTok count?
Yeah, I think that's about it. I haven't really done much reading. Oops.
Well, thanks, Rachel. Thanks for being here. Jayden?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jayden Harris. I will be a sophomore this upcoming school year. And the funniest thing that I've watched this year, not really anything. Really, I haven't watched anything funny.
It doesn't have to be funny. I just said fun.
Oh, fun.
Or your favorite thing.
I've watched Grown Ups this year. That was pretty fun.
Nice. Thanks, Jayden. Simone?
Hello, everyone. My name is Simone Simmons. I'm going to be a junior at Walnut Hills High School this fall. And the funniest thing I watched, well, the fun thing is they've started adding more Black shows on Netflix. Like they have The Game, Moesha, Braxton Family Values. So I've been watching all of those shows.
Nice. Me too, Simone. Kyron?
Hi everyone, I'm Kyron Harrison. I'm gonna be a sophomore at Western Hills High School, and probably the best thing I've watched all summer was All American.
Nice. Thanks, Kyron. Kanisha?
My name is Keisha Matthews. I am a Western Hills High School senior. And the most fun thing I have watched is, I guess it was a show on Hulu called Little Fires Everywhere, and I really enjoyed that. So,
Nice. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard very good things. Well, as always, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for all the work that you're doing behind the scenes as well as these live conversations. So we're excited to continue the work. Simone talked a little bit about the conversations that you guys have had in the past with Police Chief Isaac, with Superintendent Mitchell, which led to ultimately creating this list of demands and really bringing together what it is you want to see, not just for this school year, but in the future and total, to make things a better place for students of color and in particular Black students. So I'd be curious to hear, of the list of demands that you guys put together, what is the thing that you are most excited to accomplish this year? Simone?
Well, I'm hoping that we see more Black history being taught just all around, because there's a lack of that. And that's probably, out of all the things on our list of demands, that's probably what's most important to me, is that our history be taught.
And when you say your history be taught, is it in history class? Is it throughout the school year? What does that mean to you when you say you want history taught?
In basically every subject, because Black people have a part in science, we have a part in English literature, we have parts in history, mathematics. Like, we should be taught those things too. Like, I remember sometimes in English class learning a little bit about some literature like Langston Hughes and people like that, but I don't think that it's focused on enough, and it should be given just the same amount of attention as any other writer would be given.
Do people agree with Simone? Is that, what are the most important things to you all from that list of demands? Rachel?
I'd say, like Simone said, I feel like our history should be taught more than just 28 days out of the year, because they feel like that's the appropriate time to teach us our history, when it's not even it's not even really, I don't know how to explain it. It's the history that they want us to know, not the history that we need to know, if that makes sense. Like Simone said, like, we don't know Black writers, we don't know Black scientists, because we've never been taught about those people. The most they talk to us about in February is just like slavery, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. I don't say it, but we always hear about those people. We don't hear about other things besides just those particular people or moments in our history. Black history is more than just slavery and more than just Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. So I feel like we should be taught more than just 28 days out of the year. And when we are taught, we should be taught in depth of Black history.
Mm-hmm. Is there something, when you think about Black history, Rachel or Simone, is there something that you want to see taught, or a person that you want to learn about that hasn't been taught in the classroom?
I personally want to learn more about like Black inventors, like who invented what stuff, because we don't really know many Black inventors or Black scientists. Like Rachel said, we don't really know about that. And I want more attention to be brought to that, because we've played an important role in the development of the US. And I feel that we deserve some respect, and our props should be given to us when it's due, and it's due.
Thanks, Simone. What about you, Rachel? Is there anything that you would want to see or hear talked about in the classroom when it comes to Black history?
I would like to know more like Black writers, like authors. I've probably read like maybe 2 Black author books in school. Like one of them, a lady taught at Walnut, and I read her series of books at school. And I want to say I read another one in high school, but that's it. Like, I want to know more Black authors in my history.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's similar to what Simone was saying. It's not just in history class, it's how do Black people show up in your other courses. And English is a really big one. Kiorlin, Jayden, Kanisha, how do you guys think about that demand around seeing Black history or hearing more Black history being taught in the classroom? Kiorlin?
Yes, I like it too because I agree with what Simone and Rachel said. Like we need to know our history because all they teach us is like slavery and stuff. But like they don't teach us like the good things that Black people do, like the inventors, the writers, like the actors, the like the publishers. They don't teach us about like the good things Black people do. It's just about slavery and how we were treated. And then again, they barely do that. So
Kanisha, did you have your hand raised?
Just adding on to what they said, I think it's kind of sad because I learn more from social media about Black history than I actually do from inside my school. So yeah, that's why it needs to be added and just add. They said basically said everything, but yes, I learn from more on social media than I learn in school. So
Yeah. And there's an opportunity, obviously, with the stuff that's being shared on social media. Some of that history is so cool. It's so interesting. Um, and the fact that it's not being talked about is sad. What are the other things that are important to you on the list of demands? What are some other things that really excite you or you want to see action on immediately? I mean, you guys came up with this list, so what do you want to see? What do you want to see happen right away? Rachel?
I think another one that I would like to see is the police interaction. I think that's what we called it. It's where like the students will go either like on a trip with a police officer or we'll invite police officers to things that we're doing at our school just so we can get that interaction with a police officer, but not just have them in the mentality of a police officer, like they are human also. So like have that interaction with them as a person, not just as a cop.
Yeah, so continuing that conversation around, I'm still pulling for the student-led training on how to interact with students. I think that would be awesome. Simone, you had your hand raised too.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think that is really important for us to build a relationship with our police officers so that we won't feel uncomfortable or we won't feel tense when we're approached by them. And it's important for us to just build that foundation, like a sense of trust, because it's lack there of trust. There's no trust there. At least for me, I get scared whenever I see a police officer or whenever one of my parents gets pulled over, whenever they're behind us when we're driving. And I feel like that's a problem because they're supposed to be the ones to protect and serve us. So I feel if us students, if we build a relationship with them, we can help like ease that tension, and it can also help future generations. It can help our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah, and the other thing with that too that you guys pointed out was it's not just the school resource officers, right? It's police officers that you're interacting with that you may see in other places, right? They exist outside of the school. So having those relationships with them is really important. Tanisha?
I think I want the dedicated peer group to come about because I think it's nice if to have one in every school and just to have some people in the school who have similar interests as you talk about it with you and like you don't feel like you're alone and just like veering through and just letting everything slide. So I think it's just good for to have people to talk about it with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those peer groups were something that was talked about a lot throughout the school year. Just a quick raise of hands, do you all have like a Black Student Union or Black Student Association at your school? Raise your hand if you do. So
can you repeat?
Simone, do you have a Black Student Association at your high school? So it's just Simone, I think. Okay. Got it. Thanks, Simone. So I wonder, as you guys talk about the peer groups, obviously having a space, a dedicated space within that could look like creating, Black Student Association or Black Student Union at your high school as well, and nominate a teacher that you think could really support you in that effort. Other thoughts on the peer group idea? Something that you want to see happen this year with the peer groups in particular? No. Kanisha, what would you want? Let's say that CPS says, yes, we're going to have a peer group, a dedicated peer group at every high school. What do you think the first topic the group should be for the group? If they're talking, what do you think the first time they get together, what would you want to talk about with that group?
Me personally, I just want to talk about the discrimination, everything Black people face. I wouldn't say I would have a specific topic to go on, but it's a lot of topics to be talked about. I wouldn't put one at the top because it's just a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things to cover. I think that we talked about that mental health and kind of wellness check-in too, just how are you doing? How are you feeling? It's been it was a rough end to the last school year, and then it was kind of a crazy summer. So just checking in on each other will be really important. And you all are leaders, so I'm sure that you'll do that within your friend groups. Jayden, you've been a little quiet. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Is there something that excites you that you're thinking about with the list of demands, something that you want to see happen this school year?
The student-led, or whatchamacallit, the student-led, what was those again?
Rally.
With the police officers?
Yeah, because I've grown real close with a certain police officer. His name's Officer Mitchell. He works in my school. My mom knows him, so I see him a lot throughout the school year. And he usually says, "What's up? How you doing? How's your day?" I'm like, "I'm doing good," and all that. So building a relationship with the police is one of the things I'm looking excited to this year.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it just shows the power of having, real relationships with people can change, how you view them and your comfortability around them. So I know the group has received some grant funding, some dollars from the FC Cincinnati Foundation. I'm curious how you guys would want to see that money spent. Is there anything in particular that you think that money should be put toward?
Maybe funding for the police training, maybe.
Yeah, funding the police-led trainings or the student-led police trainings.
And funding towards our rally whenever we can have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one demand that we didn't talk about, which was the rally. So could someone share a little bit more about the demand around the rally, what it is and what it means to you and why you want to have it? Rachel?
I think the rally means we're all lucky enough to have this platform for us to use our voice, but some people was not able to be given this platform. So the rally will give people a chance to use their voice, say what they have to say, and not feel bad for saying what they have to say. So I feel like the rally is another good thing to have when we can have it, because coronavirus is real, when we can have it again. So I'm all for the rally also.
Do you think it has to be in person, or would you guys be okay with doing it in an online setting? Simone?
I feel like in person it's like a different type of vibe. Like online, it just wouldn't be the same. And I feel like we should do it in person So I'd probably say like summer of 2021 or something like.
Yeah. Well, you'll have a lot of time to plan what it could look like. Any other thoughts on, how you'd want to see that money spent, especially when it comes to the list of demands that you all put together? Yorlin?
Yeah, like Rachel was saying with the field trips with police officers, that and like stuff like around the school to help better our schools, if that makes sense.
Tell me more of what you mean around the school. Is it
Like
provide?
just I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Um it's like things like with like our history, like better, like I guess like books that's gonna tell us like more about our history
Mm-hmm.
and yeah.
Yeah, so maybe investing some of the content that you guys are talking about, investing
Hmm.
in purchasing those items to get them in the schools as quickly as possible.
Yes. Like textbooks, reading books, newspapers, things like that.
Mm-hmm. I like that idea a lot. Thanks, Kimberly. Anyone else have ideas on how they'd want to see the money spent based off of the list of demands? We talked about the rally, talked about updating books, getting more books into the school, funding some of the student-led police efforts, student police relationship efforts.
Maybe more advertisement for our program, like maybe some more publicity so people can know about us and get involved.
Mm-hmm. So finding a way to kind of get the word out about this group and get more people engaged. And that could also go into funding some of the peer groups as well, right? So just for everyone who is watching or will watch later, I'm just going to read the top line of each of the demands, just so that everyone who's watching knows. I don't know who's seen this list yet. So there are 5 demands. The first one is, we demand that every high school develop a dedicated peer group to discuss the issues faced by Black students in their respective school. The second demand is, we demand the district create a platform for all voices to be heard through student-led public rally. Number 3, we demand that Black history is embedded in the curriculum throughout the school year, not just in February. 4, we demand that CPS actively support students who want to become more civically engaged. And 5, we demand that CPS facilitate a stronger relationship and better understanding between students and the Cincinnati Police Department. So within the 5, there are more specifics. There are bullet points that the students came up with. We talked about some of them today. We probably won't get through all of them, but the goal is that moving forward, this will help inform the superintendent as well as other leaders in the classroom, as well as CPS staff, in thinking about how they can better support Black students, not just this upcoming school year, but throughout the years. So the faces that you see on your screen are responsible for coming up with this amazing list and doing a lot of back end work. So just give you guys a round of applause for all the work that you've done thus far. We're definitely excited to learn what comes of your conversation with Superintendent Mitchell. Before we chat with the teachers, just want to know if there's anything else that you guys are thinking about or any other ideas that you have outside of the list of demands that you want to see for this upcoming school year. Any other thoughts, any ideas? You wrote them all down, huh? Awesome. So we'll have the students go ahead and mute their video for the time being. I will ask the teachers to come on and introduce themselves and just share their thoughts, just general thoughts on the list of demands and some of the things that they're thinking about as they hear from the students.
Well, I'll
So
start.
we'll start.
Sorry.
Oh, go
Hi,
ahead.
everyone. I am Clarice Williams. I teach English here at Aiken New Tech High School. Swoop! I am the English department head. So what resonated with me was the students' demand for African American studies embedded in the curriculum. That has always been a pet peeve of mine. This entire idea that Black history happens in February, and then what you typically see with Black history programs is that when they do happen, it's primarily focused on Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, the names you hear all the time. And so myself and two other colleagues, Randy Foster, who teaches science for the district, and here at Aiken High School, and Kim Hummons, who teaches math, have collaborated to create our own, what we're calling Black Studies. And what we love about this is that we're doing exactly what they're asking, the students are asking, that Brandy's focus is on our contributions to the world, our impact on the world, starting there first and then in America. This idea, African American literature, just a separate course or even lesson or project just focused on African American literature, not the same ones, Alice Walker, you know what I mean? The names you hear all the time, and some current Black authors, for pop culture. And I am personally creating curriculum for music. Every Black person knows how important music is to our culture. And we are starting from before slavery. Before slavery happened, we have all these African civilizations who have these great contributions that, we don't know about, and how prevalent music is in our culture, starting from those African civilizations to slavery and how they became messages. And the only thing that changed is the message each time, depending on what time period. The slave hymns and the, Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. Then you come into NWA and Public Enemy. And then even now with the Black Lives Matter movement and some of the songs that have come as a result of that. And so we're in the process of trying to complete those now, just for that reason, because, and so here at Aiken New Tech High School, we're a project-based learning school. And so my first project is going to be this, around this idea of Black music. And so that's what I thought about when I was hearing that, when I heard the students speak.
That is amazing. Thank you. And I brought my little cup, my mug from the National Museum of African American History today in honor of our conversation. So it's exciting to hear what you're doing at Aiken. We'll have Ms. Dawn Williams. You want to introduce yourself next?
Thank you. Hi, I am Dr. Dawn Williams, and I am representing the Curriculum and Instruction Department today. And I first want to thank the work that's being done at Aiken, because as we know, to disrupt the system, it's all hands on deck. So everybody has to contribute to this work. One of our biggest projects in curriculum instruction, and it's what all of our work is going to stand for this year, we want to make sure that our students see themselves in the curriculum. And so we are starting with social studies this year. And we're not stopping with social studies, but we had to find a starting point. And the students did an amazing job advocating for Black history. One of my favorite t-shirts that I wear is that it says, not just in February, because our history is every single day, every hour of the day. So if our students that are on the call today, I am personally inviting you to be a part of that work, because your feedback is necessary. as we begin to look at our social studies curriculum. And I also want to say that I really like that they say across all content areas. And I want to call out our own personal history. So yes, we want to learn about all the famous people, but when we talk about impacting our society, we have our great grandmothers and grandfathers that made an impact. So let's make sure that we include everybody's history. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Mr. Hess?
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Jay Hess. I teach American History and Government at Riverview East Academy. So it's kind of nice to be here that we keep talking about history since I'm kind of a history teacher. So the first thing I want to start off by saying is recognizing Miss Simone Simmons, who said that you can't have American history without African American history. I said there, and I try to be as conscious of that as I possibly can, and that it should not be relegated to just 28 days in February, because the foundation of our country, no matter how you slice it, whether you look at culture, whether you look at music, government, food, everything that makes up a society, you cannot be separated from America, white America and African American. Yeah, it does not exist. You can't. There's one thing that I always try to do in my class. And excuse me, my lights just went off. But as we do in classes, I want to open up as much dialogue. And I recognize that sometimes the students don't see the contributions. So I try to fold in as much as I can. But I know I can do better than it. I know that history has been taught the same way for the last 100 years, and it needs to change. We need to refocus. We need to change our direction. And the one things I do try to do with my students as much as I can is to just have conversations, talk about what you see, what have you experienced. And you can ask Ms. Scales there on several occasions in class where we just go off on a tangent where we start talking about our favorite foods. And that some of our favorite foods are from various different cultures, but they all come together as what we would consider Americans. So I'm hoping and excited that in the coming years that we really change our focus and embed it into a year-round approach. I would love to see more history classes dedicated solely to African American history and as an actual credit grading class, because it does get lost, and it shouldn't, because you can't have American history without the African American story. It doesn't exist. You don't have, no matter what success you call, they cannot be separated, and they certainly shouldn't be relegated to 1 month out of the year. So I try the best I can, but I know I have to do better. But that should be something that every teacher across the board says. It needs to be in other subjects. It needs to be in music class, art class, English class, math class, and it's going to be a heavy lift because we're so conditioned to teach a certain way in a certain curriculum that we have to be conscious of it. So I hope with the students' help, and I encourage them to continue the fight. Let's keep bringing this change. Let's bring more to it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Ms. Lawson?
So hi, I'm Yolanda Lawson. I am an Algebra 1 teacher at Western Hills High School, West High, Best High. One of the things I want the students to know, that it's great to work to try to get it embedded. But in the meantime, you don't have to wait on a teacher to embed or for a teacher to assign you a book by a Black author. You can check out a library book. You can ask a teacher. My students, even though I'm an algebra teacher, I have books on the shelf. So if you want to get different things, don't feel like you have to wait on somebody else to teach you something about you. You can Google search. I could look up Black women mathematicians. You can look up a lot of the other things, but if you're waiting on somebody else, you're giving up your power. And I don't want you guys to give up your power. Look for some things for yourself. Help coach us along. So if there are different things you know, you can bring it to your teachers to help coach along for your other classmates. There are really things that you can do. So we're working on our end to do better, but we need your help too.
Thank you. And that's a great idea and really encouraging, especially to this group of students who are so active and empowered. There's a lot of things that they could be doing now. So we've got questions. One, thank you all again for being here. We know that you have a lot going on as teachers and district leaders. It's an interesting year for everyone, so appreciate you taking your time out of your day to just have this conversation with students. We'll start by saying that. With that, we've got students with real questions just to have a conversation. So I'm going to ask students who are ready to ask their question to go ahead and unmute themselves and show their face so they can ask their question. And why don't we start with Kjorland?
Okay, so my first question is, in what ways do you incorporate diversity and inclusion in this classroom?
Should any of us answer that question?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the majority of our students here at Aiken High School are African American. We do have a pretty large ESL population, but for the most part, I don't have many ESL students. I do generally have a few Caucasian students, but only a few. But to answer your question, so diversity and inclusion is embedded in the classroom in that anytime I'm offering, say, the district-related culminating questions, when I'm focused thematically, I make sure that I encompass multiple perspectives, not just one, that you can see, that the students will see that it's complex. And so we look at it from multiple angles. We discuss those various angles. My students, when they're grouped by their variety of academic levels, reading levels. I make sure that there's a difference in personalities, somebody who's outgoing, and maybe pair them with someone who isn't, to bring out, to help each other. So, and then when I'm covering a subject matter, whatever the content is, I still want to tell multiple perspectives. As I mentioned before about my focusing on Black music, for instance, I am not, especially because I teach English, I wouldn't just, and I'm not going to just include Black music. You have to have that perspective, including Bob Dylan, who didn't really think of himself as a protest artist, who kind of shunned away from that, to include that and compare the two. My students wrote 2 books, and only one of the books and only a part of that second book includes, Black men. But we wanted to encompass a lot of what we consider to be marginalized groups, women, and that's both Black and white or any color woman, women, people in poverty, immigrants, people with disabilities. So I try to always be cognizant that just because I'm a Black teacher and I teach the majority of Black students, that I am still ensuring that it is diverse in all things, whether it's content, how the kids are grouped, and what we cover.
Any other teacher want to answer that question, Kjorland's question?
Yeah, I can weigh in too. Interesting enough, at Riverview, our diversity is actually always 50-50 either way. 51% one group, 49% the other group. That's the way it's been from the beginning. So we oftentimes have a very diverse group of students in a room, and many times we don't even realize it. We don't even notice it. But in class, one thing I do um, pride ourselves on is the ability to have conversations with one another. Um, because a lot of times we have smaller classes, and especially at the with my older students, Miss Scales being one of them, uh, it's okay that if an issue comes up, if something would happen that has student body riled up, or something out in the community goes in, you may hear teachers say what they look for that teachable moment, and I'm lucky in that I just in my subject matter I'm afforded that more often than not of a teachable moment, and we will sit and have conversation about uh, various concepts of culture and prejudices, and I try to make it a safe environment where even a student who may have a prejudicial idea or an opinion, they get that out, and then we talk it down as a group. So um, the biggest way I can say in our classes that we do it is through conversation, and we have rules. It's you're always to be respectful. You're always to be, no matter what a person's opinion is, you hear them out, and then we discuss it, we break it down. But that's the best way that I've been able to um, deal with diversity within the classroom, different ideas. It's just through conversation, just having an honest conversation, and feeling comfortable that you can share an opinion, whether it's controversial or not, whether someone likes it or not. I've always wanted my classroom to be as welcoming for those kinds of experiences as we possibly can.
And I guess I work to have a safe space, but one of the things when I had a class, they taught us about that you could still read books in whatever class you teach. So sometimes to give my kids a break, I would read some book or some excerpt, and I know it seems juvenile, but they're the children's books where they talk about Black women scientists and inventors. So we could just read about one. Or my favorite book was for Martin Luther King Day. The Friday before, I read the I Have a Dream speech to the students. So there are different things to be able to spark conversations where it's still academic and it doesn't have to seem hardcore. It just seems like we're just taking a break, but it's helping to be inclusive of different things that go on. And then I really love just even having different exposure pieces. So they get to see different people that look like them. So I had different guests or different friends that do different things to come in and talk to the kids about what it is that they do and how what they're learning in school relates to what it is that they may want to be able to give them the exposure, but for them to see themselves included and all the different things they can do and be.
That's awesome. Thank you all for your answers. Thanks, Carolyn, for that question too. How about Simone? Did you have a question for the group?
No, I didn't really have any questions.
Any thoughts on what they've said so far?
Well, about having doing research on our own for our Black history, I think that's a good idea. And I never really thought about helping our teachers talk about it more, because I guess with them being teachers, I've always expected them to know everything, and that's not always necessarily the case. And I realize now that we can help them out with this too, and we just have to do our part like they're trying to do theirs.
Thanks, Simone. It's insightful. Yes, teachers are great, but they may not know everything. They know a lot.
We don't know everything. Trust me, we don't. But I just want to jump in again. One thing I would like to see on the student side is to come to a realization that you're learning all the time. It's not about whether or not we stand at the front of the board and present a lesson or give you an assignment or anything like that. Whether it's through a conversation, whether it's through watching a video or a TikTok or anything like that, you are learning all the time. So I try to tell many of my students, if there's something that interests you, go after it, research it, read about it, look it up, ask questions. If you've seen something that you thought was interesting, you want to share it. the learning environment needs to change in that it happens organically as well as very much structured. Remember, you're always learning. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Simone. I know one of the questions that the students had talked about, which I'm interested in hearing from you all, was around, are you happy with the curriculum that you have to teach? Do you believe that the curriculum is beneficial to our students' growth? So would love to hear your thoughts on that question from the students. And it might be helpful too to provide some insight to the students on, what you quote unquote have to teach versus what you have space to kind of create within the classroom on your own. I think that would be helpful to the students as well.
So, in talking about the mathematics curriculum, and our teachers did a great job adopting new curriculum, K-12 mathematics this year. And one of the major points, the non-negotiables, was making sure that all of our students can see themselves in the curriculum. So I just wanted, as they begin to talk about their curriculum, I just wanted our students to know how important that was for the educators to make sure that every student in every seat, when they opened up the mathematics curriculum, they could see themselves and they felt value because now they see themselves in the curriculum.
That's helpful. Thank you. Teachers, thoughts on that question from the students? How do you feel about the curriculum that you have to teach? Do you feel like you have the room and flexibility kind of, Mr. Hess, you talked about that a little bit, there are teachable moments where you kind of jump in.
It's really kind of a loaded question, to be perfectly honest. For social studies, I'll take American history. It's a daily struggle between what I have to teach versus what I want to teach, because history is a story. You're telling a story, and the story could go anywhere you want it to be. So I sometimes I do wish that the scope and sequence would be a little different in American history or even government. Sometimes I think that it gets a little, even I love history and this is my passion, it does get a little tedious, a little boring, a little, kind of bookish, if you will. So I do struggle with, there's many things that I feel are important that I want to get to, then sometimes I just run out of time. And that has to do with, I'll put it out there, with things like testing and whatnot, as, the microscope is put on you of how your testing's doing and what's going on. So you have to make sure, do I teach what I feel is important, or do I teach so I know that my students have at least experienced what they're going to be tested on? And, we like to say, oh, we do everything, we love what we do, but sometimes it is a hard decision. Sometimes, because, like it or not, the tests are there and we have to do well. And sometimes there's things that have to get cut just because I know that they would be a particular topic that's going to be covered. So, it's a struggle. It really is. I'm overall very happy with what I teach. It's just I have to be mindful 24/7 of where I'm at, what I'm doing, when I get something done, or am I going to have time, or if something just, the hard part in history class is balancing current events with history, because the current events are that's the hot stuff. That's what people want to talk about. So I try to do a balance, but sometimes I feel like I let my students down because I don't cover what they want and what they're passionate about, because there are things that I have to make sure we've discussed at least.
One thing I've watched with some curriculum pieces, I love the math book, but is about figuring out some cross-curriculum opportunities. So as I've watched with back in the classroom piece, I think a lot of times we teach our subjects in isolation. And I know this year we were trying to work to do a better job of if we're all kind of teaming. So like if you're teaching history and you're doing something about the Depression, that'd be an ideal time to read a book about somebody going through the Depression. So at the same time, while they're getting the English, they're also getting some history background pieces to make it connect. So I knew with us, we were thinking like with the health focus, we may talk about blood types, and that way they're learning something with science. They could talk about the history, like does it matter with genetics what your blood type is? But in the math classes, we would do some things with percentages and graphs and helping the kids to see how does that relate. But that way we're teaching you something at the same time, but we're teaching as a unit instead of in silos.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I think as students are thinking about their demands and what they want to see from the teachers, I think it's also important to hear from you all, what there are areas that you recognize, you want to improve in. Maybe there's some areas where you don't have as much flexibility as you want. So I think having that dialogue with the students is really valuable too. Ms. Williams, did you want to add something?
Yes, to piggyback off of Mrs. Lawson about cross-curricular opportunities. Here at Aiken, our grades 7 to 10 are paired with the history teacher, and we call our classes humanities. So they do, in fact, for the most part, history drives the driving questions surrounding the project, and reading, our teachers, English teachers, are providing those texts, those sets that encompass our the history. Now, sometimes that's difficult for them to do, to try to come up with a historical fiction novel or, some reading selection that directly relates historically. So it's always a challenge for my teachers and for us to come up with stories that relate thematically. So if 7th and 8th grade, I believe in history, they're talking about big changes in movement, how big moving, how this idea of a journey and how that changes you. Well, and then that gives them opportunity in history to speak about, that migration from parts of Europe to here in the States and the creation of the colonies. Well, from an English standpoint, our teachers talk about, well, you can bring in real life situations. Well, how do you feel about when you have to move from some place that you've loved all of your life and you have all your friends, and how does that impact you? And then they can bring in a book where the main character is going through some sort of journey, whether that's either a physical journey or some sort of mental journey. And then I teach grade 12, so I am not paired with the history teacher, but I did teach humanities for 3 years prior to that. And so when the question was asked about whether I enjoy or I'm okay with what I'm required to teach, so the only requirement as it relates to English is that we are teaching the standards. As I'm sure as all of you know, we're required to teach the standards. We're fortunate, as Jay was mentioning, it's so much to cover, and you have to choose between what you need for that American history test. Well, in English, at least at the 12th grade level, because we're not a tested subject, I do get a bit more flexibility. But what is the non-negotiable, and that's across the board, is making sure that we teach the standards. And like I said, we are fortunate in that, for the most part, we focus on the same standards. We're just making sure that the students are getting better at it with each quarter. So what I love about that, because teaching English can often be difficult, is trying to challenge ourselves to come up with something creative that doesn't make reading and writing boring. Because, with this current generation, unfortunately, most of them don't want to read anything past a byline they're seeing on Google or in social media. And so it's like in writing, it's almost taboo because they don't want to write. So that's always a challenge, trying to come up with something interesting in English class that the kids can relate to and that they're willing to try out.
That's helpful. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. I think another thing, as we talked about the with the students is having teachers also, with the innovative ideas that you guys talked about, share with their colleagues, share with other teachers, or maybe even have the district highlight some teachers who are doing really interesting things, just to spark ideas, and let people know what's working, which I'm sure CPS is already doing some of that. So hopefully there'll be more. We've got just a few minutes, so wanted to, before Rachel closes, if Kanisha or Jayden had a question, if they want to pop on here, I'll give them a moment to do so. Oh, you have a question, Rachel?
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah. And Jayden,
Do
you
you
can.
believe racism? Oh, okay. Do you believe racism is part of the curriculum and discipline in the classroom?
Say it one more time, Rachel.
Do you believe racism plays a part in the curriculum and discipline in the classroom?
Got it.
I think racism is a strong word. I think there's a such thing as cultural bias. And I think that sometimes when you're used to thinking that you see things one way, it kind of helps to be able to see in a different window. I don't believe that it's malicious, but I think sometimes you just have to stay conscious.
I would agree with Miss Lawson. I I struggle to believe that someone would be maliciously making a decision in that way, because if that would be the case, then you don't belong in this business anyway. But I do believe that there are cultural biases. I believe that there are just simple omissions that people just don't realize, that what's going on, and how a person feels, and how what I may be teaching, a perspective that I may be teaching to a particular student might not jive with the student. It may be different, but it's not a. I don't believe, and again, we could be wrong. I don't believe there's conscious racism in the curriculum, or conscious, malicious intent, I guess I would say. But certainly there are biases. There certainly are um, favoritisms, if you will.
And if I can just jump in quickly, Rachel, that we all have implicit bias, and it's everywhere. And I'm so excited about this forum that you all have created, because part of addressing those biases is education and awareness. And that's what you all are actually doing today. We all have it, but we can't manage our own biases. And sometimes you do see that in the curriculum. It's until we recognize that we all have it and then have a plan to manage it. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And we know the data is out there on how implicit bias does show up in the classroom, right? And so I think the role of teachers to continue to educate themselves on and question themselves as they're thinking about, how does it show up for me? And it's also the role of you guys, which is what you're doing as students, which is to call teachers out and help them think about ways that maybe it's showing up that they weren't aware of before. It's a learning process for all of us. We'll end with your question, Jayden. Did you have one?
Yes, I did. My question is, how will the teachers be able to differentiate their lessons for students that may be struggling in their online lessons?
Did you guys catch that?
If I heard it correctly, you asked, how will we differentiate our lessons for students? How will we differentiate our virtual lessons for our students who are struggling? Is that what you asked?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is something that we are currently receiving training on. My principal asked, Lisa Vota asked our staff specifically the types of things they want to be trained on. And that's one of the things, being able to engage students during distance learning. And so we're currently learning new strategies, like, for instance, allowing time that while the students are completing some student-centered work, that I have a separate Google Meet link so that I can meet with individual students during that student-led time if they need help. Such thing as using Screencastify to videotape ourselves, you know, closely reading a text, and then asking questions, those quick comprehension questions to ensure that we are scaffolding for someone who needs it, and providing the graphic organizers to help with that, that difficult text, or doing things like adding that Google Read to Write extension so that students who are struggling with reading can use that app and then have it read to them, and to also the Google Meet feature. I don't know if anybody uses it. I mean, I know you use Google Meet, but I mean, they have a caption feature so that kids who are struggling to understand you, you're having tech issues, you turn those captions on and have the students read it that way. So this is going to be a challenge for us all. And I know here at Aiken, and I'm sure you guys are, Jay and Yolanda, we're all trying to come up with these great ways that we're going to provide that equity to reach all of our kids. So I don't know if all of us have the answer to that question yet, but we are certainly looking for the answer.
And Jayden, I know we're running out of time. What I would say to you, and please spread the word, is that just like you're advocating for equity in your demands here in this forum, you also have a voice every single day. There will be a student survey that goes out weekly. So we need you all to advocate for yourself and your own learning and say, hey, I don't get this, I need help. So the distance that we normally are, we are really going to need you to do that. So please spread that word.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you for that question, Jayden.
And even for Jayden, really fast, this is part two, not just with the survey, this is part of now how you get to advocate for yourself with your teacher. So if you don't understand, don't assume that the teacher figures out what you do or don't know. You let your teacher know. So for our kids, we work to have different office hours to be able to fluctuate. And there are enough teachers where if you can't understand me, maybe a co-teacher says, you know, we'll help each other's kids. But don't just sit and not know what you're doing and you drown. Reach out and let a teacher know you need help. You've got your classmates on Schoology posting Schoology. Hey, can somebody else help explain this to me? You can do this. You got it. Honor roll time.
I love it. Got a little pep talk from Ms. Lawson. Thanks, Jayden. Thank you for that question. Teachers on the call, thank you so much for joining today's conversation. We're a little past 1, so I will ask Rachel to pop on and kind of close us out. The one thing that I will say to the teachers and the students is keep doing what you're doing. It's clear that you care about this, and I'm excited to see what relationships and what opportunities form outside of this forum and into the classroom or the virtual classroom this upcoming school year. So thank you all for being here. I'll go ahead and turn off my video. I'll ask teachers to do the same, and then Rachel will close us out.
All right, thank you to everyone who watched and participated this week of Speak Up and Speak Out. There's also work still being done behind the scenes. I also hope everyone's having a great start to the new school year. Once again, thank you all for watching and participating.